is the end of an era. The Splash Brothers no more.
Klay Thompson is a Dallas Maverick now. What does he bring to the table?
Derek White got the extension we expected. Jason Tatum got the extension we expected.
Or was this a wild weekend for the Detroit Pistons?
Sam Reinhart is staying in South Florida.
Their biggest free agent signing in the history of their franchise.
The Locked On Podcast Network presents the Big 6 in 60. The 6 biggest national sports stories from the local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Get the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 60 minutes. The Big 6 in 60 starts now with the biggest story in sports.
I'm Peter Bukowski. The Big 6 in 60 is brought to you by Game Time. Last minute tickets, the lowest price guaranteed. Use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first ticket purchase. Today, we get the local insight from the top stories in sports, including the biggest moves from NBA free agency and the latest between Brandon Ayuk and the 49ers. But we start with the biggest story of the day. The Dallas Mavericks already had an argument for the best backcourt in the NBA with Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving. And on Monday, Dallas added a splash brother. Klay Thompson will sign a 3-year, $50 million contract with the Western Conference champs in a 3-team sign and trade, which also gives the Hornets Josh Green and the Warriors a second-round pick. Locked On Mavericks host Nick Angstad brought on Kylan Mills from Locked On Warriors to tell us what Klay will bring to the court in Dallas.
He's 34. He just shot 39% on 9 threes a game, and you call that a down year. What does a down year look like for Klay Thompson?
The big thing, or the big reason why, at least I would also call it a down year, is because of the inconsistencies. There were times where all of a sudden he'd be on fire and he's hitting every shot from beyond the arc. There were games like his last game in a Golden State Warriors uniform against the Sacramento Kings in the play-in game. People keep bringing up and showing the stats, but he goes 0 for 10. And that's the reality of what Klay Thompson was this past season. Where the Warriors were at, they needed a reliable secondary scorer. They need someone who can come in and bring 20 plus every single night. There can't be this up and this down. There can't be some nights it's 25, sometimes it's 30 from Klay Thompson, and then you get a big goose egg. They need someone who's going to be consistent. The reason why I think he'll be great in this role with Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving is that you don't need him to be the secondary scorer. You've got two. He can be the third. He can be a role player. And I think he's a great role player to bring in. I also think simplifying his role is going to make a huge difference, because the other thing is with the Warriors, I think it's tough when you've got Steph Curry, you've got Klay Thompson. I think there were a lot of times where Klay would feel like he has to do too much in terms of creating off the dribble, creating for himself. Despite the fact the Warriors do have a motion offense, they want the ball to be moving. Sometimes he does too much. And I think simplifying the role, catch and shoot. That's all we need you to do. That's when he's at his best. Klay Thompson, elite catch and shoot. You look at the Mavs, they led the league in open shots created this past year. Klay Thompson, golden for that. I actually think this is a great fit. This is a great place for him to go because of that. But I think just with the Warriors system, the fact they needed someone to step up as a secondary scorer, he was forcing it. He was doing too much. It's something he's done, especially since coming back from his injuries, Nick, because I think him as a competitor felt like I need to be doing more. I need to immediately be back to that level I was before dealing with 2+ insane injuries, being out 2+ years, 900+ days between when he returned from his Achilles tear that was following an ACL tear. 900+ days. You're not going to immediately be the same player, and you might never be the same player, but I think there was this intrinsic pressure he put on himself to go back to that level that led to him sometimes doing too much, taking tough contested shots, like I said, creating off the dribble, which isn't his forte. He's at his best when he simplifies it, and I think that's something he can do with the Mavs, which is why this could be great for him.
Yeah, there's all the people questioning, he's going to a completely different offensive system with the Mavericks, where it's one guy handles the ball and pounds the rock and then creates for others and all that. And it's but he also, Klay doesn't have to run around all these screens all the time and run 4 miles a game and figure out how to get
but
shots and all that.
The off-ball movement, I think, can be good too when you look at Kyrie and Luka. His ability to move off the ball and create space and figure out how to get open, that ultimately is a good thing. But yes, maybe you don't have to run 4 miles a game. That's not a bad thing. You know what I mean? That's not a bad thing. I don't think there's any concern that he'll fit into the system. So it's interesting if that's something the fans are questioning. I don't think that'll be an issue.
I think it was fans of other teams I saw for the most part. They were questioning that. But I think that in the same way that when they brought in Kyrie, they melded together this like faster pace because Kyrie wanted to push the pace. The end of the first season when Kyrie got traded over, it was like watching two different teams where Luka, they played the slowest pace in the NBA and they would pound it and they would walk the ball up, and Kyrie would try and push and play fast and all this, and you're like, we have two different squads basically on this team. And I think with Klay coming into the mold, I think they can run more of that. Let's move a little bit more. Let's run Klay off screens and do this. We can run Kyrie off screens and do a little bit more and like involve that into more of because the Mavs in the finals, they got stuck with, hey, we've got two guys that can dribble. Yeah. And that's it. Right. Like that's where their offense got so limited. And I think
if you stop the dribble penetration, then it's too one-dimensional. You're done.
That's it. And that was it. And so I think bringing Klay into the fold opens up the playbook a little bit, opens up their offensive structure to allow a little bit more creativity, different things into it. And then, he's going to get 5 or 6 wide open shots a game just because Luka can create for him. He's just going to stand there and like Luka will create that for him. And he hasn't really had that in Golden State. Am I wrong?
No, you're right. That's exactly kind of what I'm saying. Why I think that his role ended up being a little bit too much to where he was capable or what he was capable of doing post-injury. There aren't wide open shots, or there haven't been in this Golden State Warriors offense, especially the last 2 years. Another issue is just they didn't have a ton of depth in terms of their three-point shooting, which is something kind of crazy to say about the Warriors. But the last 2 years, it really has been Steph and Klay, and there hasn't been a lot of depth in terms of three-point shooters coming in off the bench when he's working in with different, rotations. For example, he worked with the second unit. He actually was better when working with Chris Paul, which I think was something interesting. When Klay Thompson moved to the bench this past season, his numbers went up. And I think that he benefits from having a ball handler working with him 100%. Whereas Steph also wants to get some of the catch and shoot threes. Like I think Steph, you don't necessarily want him always creating off the dribble and always trying to facilitate. So I do think there was a little bit of a push and pull into the fact where Klay Thompson wasn't shooting just at this insane all NBA level. Because the bottom line is when they're both hitting the way he was when he's an all NBA player, like you've got the best backcourt in the NBA, and especially in terms of 3-point shooting, that's hard to stop. They can shoot their way out of some problems. And also they're able to push the pace earlier, which is another big thing. The Warriors were a lot slower offensively, bottom third of the league in both fast break points and points off turnovers, which is something that hadn't been the case during the 2022 season because transition threes are something that also allowed Steph and Klay to unlock another level of their game, which is going to be a little bit interesting, I think, with the Mavs, because to your point, bringing in Kyrie immediately, I was like, well, maybe they'll pick up the pace a little bit more. That's not Luka's game, but like, how much can they realistically look to get those transition opportunities? Because those are easy looks at the end of the day, but also you have to have defense to do that, Nick. So
Mavs have played defense. They were the number one defense in the NBA for the last 3 months of the season. So we'll take that.
Yeah, 100%.
When you talk about Klay Thompson forcing it too much or pounding the rock too much, what is he doing? Like, is he just starting top of the key and is like trying to create for himself, or what is he doing when you're imagining that?
I mean, it's a little bit of everything, but just, like I'm just picturing Klay like on the dribble, going down the baseline. He's guarded. He's pulling up contested of a baseline too. It's just like, not just the 3 ball. I'm saying like getting inside the arc. It's just like, why? Like that's a tough shot. Just like make the extra pass, reset, whatever the situation may be. Just anytime to me, if you're Klay Thompson and you're not open, like you don't have to take it. And it felt like every single time he gets the ball, he has to take it. And some frustration from the fans was it felt like hero ball. Like I think that's just the example, or the phrase that rings a bell for a lot of folks. Like it's not necessarily 1 or 2 looks, sometimes top of the key, sometimes not, but just wherever he's getting the ball. If Klay Thompson's getting it, you feel like it's a black hole a little bit because he's dribbling and he's going to try to find a way to get his own shot. I think the times he was at his best is where he had more patience and he let the game come to him and he just moved the ball because that's when the Warriors offense is at their best. So it's not necessarily like one thing he was doing, but just in general, not waiting for the most open shot or the best opportunity, whether it be off the dribble, whether it be, hey, he came off a screen, but it didn't work out. The play didn't pan out the way they thought. He still guarded. Like, just reset. We don't have to take that. And it just felt like a lot of times he felt like he had to take that because he wants to be the hero. He wants to be the player he was. He wants to make sure he's putting points on the board and being the secondary scorer when it doesn't always have to be that way. You got to have patience.
I'm interested to see how he fits into that third scorer role again, going back to, because he did that with Steph and KD. I mean, he was exactly in that role. So I'm curious how he goes back into that, if that really resets things for him and really allows him to play with a little bit more freedom and not feeling like he has to force things. So I'm curious how that works out. I'm also very curious how the defense works out, because this is a question that arises for the Mavericks now is, how can you build a defense with Luka, Kyrie, and a 34-year-old coming off of these 2 terrible injuries, Klay Thompson?
Stay up to date on all things Mavericks by subscribing to Locked On Mavericks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Up next, the departure of Klay Thompson marks the end of an era for the Warriors, but also signals a shift in the direction of the franchise. With Steph and Klay splitting up, will the Warriors look to retool or go into rebuild mode? That's next on the Big Six in 60. I love sports. I love them so much, I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs come to a close on the ice and on the court, we got fewer games. And the sports aren't sportsing like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports doing whatever I want because I can open the app and dream up a bet anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right, there's something for everyone every day all summer long. The Philadelphia Phillies are underdogs tonight. Sure, they have the best record in baseball, but FanDuel likes the Cubs at home. The Phillies, a plus 108. The Cubs are also on a skid. I don't know. It seems like getting the best team in baseball on plus value sounds like a surefire bet, but we'll see. Head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Welcome back to the Big Six in 60, where our local experts take a deeper dive into the day's biggest sports stories. I'm Peter Bukowski. Klay Thompson signing in Dallas meant the end of the greatest shooting duo in NBA history, but it's also the end of the Warriors' hopes of contending anytime soon, right? Maybe not. Locked On Warriors host Kylan Mills is back with Charlie Wolter to look at Golden State's next move.
Klay Thompson moving on. I think you've got to erect the statue outside. They already released a statement thanking Klay for all that he's done. They've said they're going to retire number 11. To me, that wasn't in question, but I do think you've got to not just tip your cap, but say a big thank you to Klay Thompson for all that he's done and all that he's brought to the Warriors organization. I think it's unfortunate to see the relationship fracture and end the way it has. He did post, Thompson did a story on Instagram saying, thanks to the Warriors and that kind of thing. But, there definitely is a sour taste in his mouth, I think, because of the way that this whole thing transpired. Just a week ago, there were reports that the Warriors hadn't officially offered him a dollar amount because they're waiting to see what's going to shake out with everything else going on in free agency as they're trying to work some trades behind the scenes. And I was told they were not willing to go to 3+ years. Klay Thompson wanted 3+ years, even if he would have taken less money, which is what he ended up doing. Drop a comment in the chat. Do you think the Warriors should have gone with 3 years or given Klay Thompson a 3-year+ offer, or was this the right move? I understand it from a business side, but there's still a little bit of a nostalgia factor. If you're a Warriors fan, like to see the big three be able to retire as Golden State Warriors, been with the organization for 13 years, there's got to be a little bit of sadness in seeing that dream go to the wayside.
He's a legend. Simple as that. I mean, 13 years together. Fans that saw him in third grade play together for the first time are now, out of college. So life came at you fast, and 4 championships later, I don't know what you do from here. I think you go out there and you get a star. They've been fishing right now for some big fish with Paul George, Zach LaVine, some others in the mix, but you got to hit something. If not, you're expecting Jonathan Kuminga to be your clear-cut number 2, I would think.
He's not ready.
Unless they think that Podziemski, who I really like, by the way, and the chat may disagree with me. I know I've heard people out there saying they think Moody's a lot better than Podziemski. I like his game. I think he's crafty. He plays a lot bigger than his size in the paint. He kind of slows down the game, and then he's got a nice little. He kind of has that Jordan Poole step back 3 that I like, and the percentages say that he's good. He's gotten better every year since his freshman year at Illinois. And has a lot of talent. So don't sleep on Podziemski. Is he the future? Should he be the Robin right now, the Batman? I don't think I'd go that far. Right now, Warriors are trending towards not a great basketball team as the roster is currently constructed. What does Dunleavy do? How does he find a rabbit in the hat and pull it out? Because there are only so many moves it seems like you can make.
The options are getting smaller and smaller by the day. The Paul George thing, the Clippers rejecting the trade, was definitely a big disappointment. It's also interesting to hear more and more reports that teams are going to do whatever they can to block the Golden State Warriors. That's also something that has to be acknowledged. Teams do not want to help this Golden State team get better. You look at what happened with the CBA, the restrictions and the salary. That's not helping the Golden State Warriors. I have been an advocate for a long time that there should be exceptions in the salary cap for players that you drafted and developed yourself as an organization. That has to be something that's rewarded. Homegrown players, you don't see teams do what the Warriors have done with a Klay Thompson, for example, who was drafted, with a Steph Curry, who was drafted by the organization, Draymond Green, Kevon Looney. I think that there needs to be something built into the CBA, but instead it came crashing down on the Golden State Warriors, and supposedly they want to help small market teams. No, I think it was ridiculous. And because of that, the Warriors' hands were a little bit tied when it came to negotiations this season.
Oh, you were tossing it to me.
This is a conversation. That's how this works.
Yes, that it is. Look, at this point, Dunleavy's in a tough spot. I mean, there's no doubt about it. This is an organization, and not really Dunleavy. He hasn't been at the helm long enough, but he's been in the mix to make some of these decisions. But they've missed out on quite a few things in recent years. They've made a lot more bad decisions than good decisions, it feels like, not to take away from all the success that they've had. But dating back to, picking James Wiseman, and maybe even before that, I mean, if you could go back in a time machine, it's very simple in that position. You're trading away that pick there, regardless of whether you believed in James Wiseman or not, just because of the timelines there. But clearly there wasn't a lot of faith that Klay Thompson was going to get back to the point where he's even at now, because they used that pick in that situation. But looking back on that, that was tomfoolery, in my opinion. Paying Jordan Poole all that money that you paid him right then when he was hot, I thought that was a little bit silly. The trade for Paul, I mean, the dump, it all just, I don't know, Kylan. I don't know. It seems like the decisions have not been amazing lately.
There definitely are people who are suspect when it comes to Mike Dunleavy Jr. He's going to need to pull a rabbit out of his hat to win over this fan base, because I'm doubting right now. I'm going to be straight up. I am doubting what this man is capable of. What is he doing in these negotiations to try to bring in that secondary score? We have yet to see the fruits of his labor and what he's supposedly doing behind the scenes. Something has got to give. The Warriors, I tweeted this, and I hope this isn't the case, but the offseason so far is giving. Well, we believe we have the pieces on this roster to have a very competitive team come the postseason.
Yeah.
If you see my fingers, I'm putting them up in quotations because someone on Twitter made a comparison to what the San Francisco Giants have tried to feed the fans the last couple of seasons.
People, yeah.
We believe we have the pieces in place. That cannot be the story this season for the Warriors. They need to make changes. Bottom line, even if the young players make major strides, even if Jonathan Kuminga, Brandon Podziemski, Moses Moody.
Stay up to date on all things Warriors by subscribing to Locked On Warriors, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The Boston Celtics spent a lot of money on Monday. They dropped $126 million to keep Derek White in Boston, and then gave Jason Tatum the biggest contract in NBA history. 5 years, $314 million. On average, more than $62 million per year. After the spending spree, Boston has all of its title-winning starting five locked in for at least the next 2 seasons. Locked On Celtics host John Corrales was joined by Tom Westerholm to go over an expensive day for Boston.
Number one bad basketball take I saw was that the Jason Tatum extension was a bad signing. So that person's already getting pulled over.
Who said that?
This is very simple, right? What is there to discuss? Jason Tatum, richest contract of all time. It's a 5-year deal, $315 million. We all knew it was coming. Anything to say about it, Tom?
I mean, I think it bears some discussion, if only because this was not a sure thing not that long ago, right? There was like some concern over like, hey, like, does Jason Tatum want to be elsewhere? And now the answer, it's cool for the Celtics that things worked out the way they did, because now the answer seems to very clearly be no. Like, this is,
right.
This is a great position for him. This is a great situation.
He became a Boston legend with the championship. Once you win that chip, your number has a chance of going into the rafters. His very definitely will.
Yeah.
There's a banner going up, maybe 2, because they're going to run it. They're running it all the way back. They're bringing 12 guys from last year's team all under contract. So that's
they added future All-Star Baylor Shireman.
That's right. So that's big summer for them.
Big summer.
The championship has made it like pretty clear. Like obviously, like Tatum is here for the long haul. He's going to be here into his 30s. There's, I'm not going to say he's going to retire a Celtic because nobody retires with their original team anymore. Yeah. But who knows? And maybe if one of the expansion teams ends up in St. Louis, then he'll be a flight risk. But until then, he's under contract for a while. Very good deal. Obviously, it's the richest contract in NBA history, which will be broken next year, and the year after that, and the year after that, and the year after that. So don't worry about like, oh, is he really worth the most? Like you said the same thing about Jalen, and the answer was yes.
Yes, sir.
The bigger deal, honestly, is the Derek White extension, 4 years, $126 million. And for a couple of reasons. Number one, he could have gone to free agency next year and tried to go for a bigger deal. But he decided, like, no, I want the sure thing. He turns 30, but July 2nd is his birthday. Happy birthday, Derek White. Happy birthday, Joe Mazzulla. His birthday was yesterday.
Yeah.
So like lots of these nice July birthdays. He's getting a 4-year deal with a player option at 30 years old. So at 33, if he's still awesome, which is not out of the question at all in today's NBA, and the way he plays, I expect that he can opt out and get another deal with Boston somewhere else, whatever. So getting that deal for him and him agreeing to stick around for less team-friendly deal, for him is great. And secondly, he is just the model of the type of player you need in today's NBA with the space, with the shooting, with the decision-making, super high IQ player, always makes the right play. He's the type of guy that you need on a roster. So this was not just like a no-brainer. This was an absolutely imperative thing. No matter what happens after this year, if they have to start selling off pieces, 3 guys you definitely need: Tatum, Brown, Derek White, and you can figure out the rest from there, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, that's an awesome core, right? Like you look at that core and it's just like, oh man, what good basketball is going to be played here. I think it's, a nice thing for Derek White too. You lock in that extension, you lock in that guaranteed money. The guy jumps, like it's all these guys are fabulously well paid, right? Like they're so rich, like they're just very wealthy men. But Derek White now jumps from average salary $17 million a year to average 31. Like 31, that is not that far away from double his money, and like that's a big deal. You lock that in for 4 years. That's worth. I don't know. I think that's, especially you're coming off a championship. People were talking about you as like, hey, like maybe this guy's like a borderline all-star. Like this is a great time to sign your extension. You have excellent positioning, excellent. You're in a great place to sign a new deal. So yeah, I think it made a lot of sense for him. And obviously, yeah, if you're the Celtics, like I love what they did this year, where there was no messing around, just kind of calling everybody up like, again, everybody. Yeah. Again.
Good. We good.
Luke. Yeah. Did you enjoy that? Was that fun? That seemed fun. You want to do that again? Yeah. Kata, we gave you our final roster spot. What a spot for you. Want to come back? Yes. Cool. Derek, $30 million a year. You in? Jason, the richest contract in NBA history with all the bells and whistles. Yes. Everybody good. Bringing the whole team back. Ocean's 11 has reassembled itself. Like, you SOB, I'm in. Like they're, everybody's back.
Yes, I agree. They've been talked about as the team that is built to withstand the second apron at least a little bit. Now, what at least a little bit means is they're not breaking up the team right away like the Clippers, like the Warriors. The Warriors traded away Klay Thompson. Now, Klay Thompson was not great last year, but he wasn't terrible. And considering his history with the team, they got 2 second-round picks for Klay Thompson. That is unbelievable because they couldn't take back any salary. So you couldn't even with his depressed value, you couldn't get back what you're supposed to get back for Klay Thompson. That's huge. So as other teams are making these tough decisions, the Celtics are just like, we just won and one more rodeo. Now, after that, the 25-26 Celtics will be if this continues, if they win a championship and everybody drunkenly says one more round, that will be a $450 million team with salary and taxes, the most expensive team ever assembled. And that will be a little bit tough. We'll see how that is received. And there will be decisions that will be made at the very the very most. That will be the final run with that group.
Yeah.
But if they can get, best case scenario, you get 3 championships out of it. And you're like, hey, everybody have fun everywhere else. It's like Ocean's 11, like you said, and everybody's staring at the Bellagio fountain. They're like, all right, I'm going to go this way. I'm going to go that way. One last ride and we're good. This is the thing with that. If you're a Celtics fan,
I wrote about this for Boston.com today, but just enjoy this, man. Cause these are the good times, right? Yeah. These are the times that it's like, you get to just enjoy this because like this is a championship team. This type, and this, this situation doesn't last forever, but you don't have to think of it that way. Like you can absolutely see the end of this team if you squint, but why bother squinting? Yeah. You just got to enjoy it because this is a special team. It's not going to last forever. And you just got to enjoy it while it's here.
Enjoy what you have while you have it.
Remember, this is all coming at the same time. The Boston Celtics are reportedly exploring a sale under their ownership group. Stay up to date on all things Celtics by subscribing to Locked On Celtics, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Coming up, the Thunder added some size to the roster in Isaiah Hartenstein. We'll find out how much he can help last season's top seed in the West on the Big 6 in 60. Game Time makes getting to the ballpark even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, and their best price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. They're obsessed with finding ways to help you save money on tickets. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event. Have you heard how many times I've said the word tickets? They're obsessed with them. Find exclusive flash deals and sponsored deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. There, I said it again. And the Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price on tickets. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the free app and new users can get $20 off their first purchase with code Locked On. Terms apply. That's code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase with Game Time. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, the lowest price guaranteed. This is the Big 6 in 60, a closer look at the 6 biggest stories in sports. I'm Peter Bukowski. The Knicks hope to bring Isaiah Hartenstein back this offseason after he helped New York to the 2 seed in the Eastern Conference, but instead, Hartenstein chose to ditch the bright lights of Madison Square Garden for Oklahoma City and $86 million over 3 years. How much will the big man's elite defense help OKC in the West? Locked On Thunder's host Rylan Stiles has the answer.
That started on Sunday whenever there was reports right out of the gate that the Thunder had gone to Eugene, Oregon to try to land the New York center. And they left Eugene, Oregon without the reported deal. A deal got worked out overnight in the morning, as Woj reported and Shams reported, that it's a 3-year, $87 million deal. This is the exclamation point on a perfect offseason. But let's talk about the Hartenstein piece first before we go big picture. So Hartenstein signs a 3-year deal, $87 million, and that sticker shock might be eye-popping to you. But you have to keep into perspective that this is a luxury Oklahoma City can afford. This deal has been reported that it's a 2-year deal with the third being a non-guarantee. I'd imagine it's 2+1 or something like that. We'll soon figure all that stuff out. But the reality is it's been made clear by the New York Post that the third year of this deal is seemingly easy to get off of, and it's a front-loaded contract. That is perfect. That's all you needed to hear. This deal does not in any way, shape, or form hinder your core nucleus. It does not hinder your ability to bring back Shea, J-Dub, and Chet. It does not hinder your ability to develop Shea, J-Dub, and Chet. There's no power struggle, weird dynamic, weird mesh period. Those three continue to be at the top of the snake. Those three continue to dominate, possessions and opportunities and chances and development. And you've now flushed out a roster around them that is prepared for rain. That's ready when they are. So when you look at this, the signing of Isaiah Hartenstein, yes, the value of the contract might be a bit more. What does that $5 million really mean? Right? Let's say that they outbid it and they spent $5 million above market value, or whatever number you want to put on it. Really, realistically, any number above market value, whatever you feel comfortable with putting on it. Let's say that they want above market value for this specific team at this specific moment in time. That does not hinder you in the future. That figure is completely worth it. Completely worth it. Because the Thunder are in this unique position of threading that needle, of getting to spin now in their last chance of having cap space, and not hindering their future. And it's been very clear again that New York Times, the New York Post report of how it's front loaded and how the third year is kind of in flux. It's a non-guarantee or it's an option, whatever it's going to end up coming out as. That makes it very clear that it's also a very tradable contract should you get there, but I don't think that you're going to get there. What this move does is it makes Oklahoma City the most diverse team in the NBA. The portfolio that they have, the options that they have, they can match up with anybody, any style, anywhere, anytime. When healthy, this team can do whatever they need to do to win. If you need to go big and you're thinking to yourself, well, who's this wing? Who can play on the wing? J-Dub at the power forward in a game where you need to go big? Well, how about Chet at the power forward when you need to go big? And Hartenstein in the middle, or vice versa, but obviously Chet would be more likely to be in the wing. How about Chet as the wing when you need to go big? How about if a team tries to play the small ball game, as the New Orleans Pelicans did, which did not work out well in the first round? Like, remember, the Pelicans leaned into small ball because the Thunder were able to play Valanciunas off the floor. They leaned into small ball. That plays right into the Thunder's hands. They're still the best small ball team in the NBA. So they're for sure the best small ball team in the NBA. And now they've addressed, the weakness, so to say, of their front court rotation and their inability to match up with bigger teams. So they can match up with bigger teams. They can play small ball. They have those two tricks now. And then independent of that, this is still their style of play. This was not a move for the sake of getting bigger. This was a move for the sake of playing Thunder basketball. So here are the skill sets of Isaiah Hartenstein he's going to bring in. Hartenstein, much better rebounder than on the roster. He's an exceptional passer for his position. He's a really good decision maker for his position. He has ball handling and ability to play off the catch. He has an immense cutting ability, one of his best traits on synergy. Really good pick and roll option. Arguably the best screen setter on the team. I think that's, of course, a skill that's hard to tangibly define, but I would say he's the best screen setter on the team, which then leads to some really nice pick and roll opportunities, especially for a team with such a drive-heavy offense of you get him rolling to the basket, you get him cutting to the basket, you get him in the dunker spot as a safety net. Those are all great things. Then you find him early on short rolls. He can then kick it out and redirect and keep the defenses moving. So his ability to have gravity and floor spacing, while we think of floor spacing as like, who are you going to stay tethered to in terms of like, if they're staying at the three-point line, will you stay tethered to them? It's really how many times can you make the defense move? And you make the defense move more with passes than you do anything else. And he's an exceptional passer. And he presents a different look than what you're typically used to seeing. So to play the Thunder and to gear up to play them, you've got to be ready to play three different styles. You can play in a humongous lineup, because now all of a sudden the Thunder have gone from being quote unquote too small to they can put a lineup out there that few teams can match. Shea, Caruso, Dub, Chet, Hartenstein. With what Caruso does scaling up as a defender, with the positional size of Shea, and then you have J-Dub and Chet and Hartenstein in the front court. Find me a team that can get bigger than that. Find me one team that can get bigger than that effectively. Because see, for as big as that lineup is, it's also an effective lineup. It's also a lineup that you could actually envision practically playing and working out. Find me a team that can get, a better small ball lineup on the floor than the small ball lineups that the Thunder can put out there. And then in between those two extremes, you just have a normal flow of like, we've seen what the starting five of Shea, Caruso in place of Giddey, Dort, Dub, Chet looks like. Substituting Caruso for Giddey makes that lineup sensational. And now your secondary unit is going to have a stagger of Shea and Dub plus Kaysen and Wiggins and Joe and Hartenstein. And like, now you've elongated that front court rotation to where now you're standing at Chet, Hartenstein, Jay Will, Kenrich Williams. In my opinion, Dylan Jones will play more of that forward role than guard role. I know that people freaked out that his position label had a G next to it, but functionally in the NBA, as Nick Crane and I talked about yesterday, I think that Jones is included in this kind of forward package, but specifically a kind of center package. It'd be Chet, Hartenstein, the J Will, the Kenrich at spells, if you want to go small. They have done everything possible to maximize this offseason. They maximize their ability to upgrade for Josh Giddey. I would encourage you to go back to May. As soon as the Dallas Mavericks series ended, what were people's dream scenarios of a Josh Giddey upgrade? They were significantly worse than Alex Caruso. And yet somehow this organization pulled off getting Alex Caruso. So you could not have asked for a bigger, better upgrade fit-wise, production-wise, stylistically than Caruso. And Giddey, as we've mentioned it countless times on this pod, will have a fantastic career in Chicago. But for this team, Caruso's a massive upgrade. Then they go into the draft, and they take a high upside pick at 12, who could pan out. They take two extremely versatile players, to end the first round and the top of the second round. They keep their flexibility open and also draft really good players and also draft for the future and draft for upside and production and everything else. And then they go into free agency and they land the guy. They land the guy that everybody wants. This was the hottest name among Thunder fans. This is a guy that traded in Broadway for Bricktown, which has never happened before in the history of the world, much less in the history of basketball. Now, the payday certainly helps. The pay increase certainly helps. But there's also a belief that, adding Hartenstein, who averages 7 points a game, 8 rebounds a game, 2 assists a game, a steal, a block per game, who shoots 61% on runners, who has all these thundery skills besides the outside shooting, but no big man is perfect that's going to have all those skills. You cannot get a more Thunder-style big man than Hartenstein, especially for the contract and for the threading the needle aspect of that contract that falls off the books before Shea, J-Dub, and Chet. You could not have done any better than Hartenstein to address your needs. And the fact that you did not have to give up assets to go do it is a luxury that the Thunder have never been able to have to this point. This is the first time ever in any iteration in any team where the Thunder have this dramatically improved their roster, without giving up assets, without giving up picks, without giving up young players.
Stay up to date on all things Thunder by subscribing to Locked On Thunder, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. After the break, the Pistons added Tobias Harris. Can he help bring some leadership to a Detroit team still figuring out how to win? That's next on the Big Six in 60. I love sports. I love them so much, I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs come to a close on the ice and on the court, we got fewer games. And the sports aren't sportsing like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports doing whatever I want because I can Open the app and dream up a bet anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right, there's something for everyone every day all summer long. The Philadelphia Phillies are underdogs tonight. Sure, they have the best record in baseball, but FanDuel likes the Cubs at home. The Phillies plus 108. The Cubs are also on a skid. I don't know. It seems like getting the best team in baseball on plus value sounds like a surefire bet, but we'll see. Head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Welcome back inside the Big Six in 60. I'm Peter Bukowski. The Detroit Pistons won't be winning the NBA title next season in all likelihood and haven't even been to the playoff conversation in a while. Not even the playoffs, the playoff conversation. 5 straight seasons with no more than 23 wins. It has some upside, though. Draft picks. Detroit has a young, unproven roster, but Monday added Tobias Harris in an attempt to bring some veteran experience to help new coach JB Bickerstaff. Locked on Pistons host Ku Cahill gives us his take on the $52 million contract.
The Detroit Pistons signed Tobias Harris. They signed him to a 2-year, $52 million deal, which means it's going to be a $26 million annual contract. Now, we haven't gotten the exact, this is a big, we just got a notification. Okay, the Orlando Magic just got Batazi back. That was someone I thought the Pistons could potentially be looking at, but he just returned to Orlando on a 3-year deal. So that's another guy off the board that I thought maybe the Pistons could go after. But let's move on with Tobias. Tobias signed a 2-year, $52 million deal. Now, we don't have the exact specifics of it yet. It sounds like, from what I understand, there is not a team option on the last year. But more so, we don't have the specifics right now, as of, at least from what I've seen. Whether maybe the contract's front loaded or maybe the contract's back loaded. Like, we're assuming that it's just 26 a year, but maybe they could have front loaded in the first year and then not as much in the second year, or maybe back loaded where there's more than the second year. Who knows? Or maybe not back loaded is a little bit incorrect. That's incorrect. Maybe it's like 25 to 27 or 27 to 25. That's what I mean. Not that you could do like a 10-year in the first year and then 30 in the final year. That's not what I meant. Is it like descending? Is it ascending? Or is it just 26 across both years? We don't really know yet. Either way, though, I think this is a really good deal for the Detroit Pistons. I don't fully understand why there's some people upset about this deal. I've been very consistent in my thoughts about them going after Tobias. First of all, I've said for like months that you might as well just pencil in Tobias Harris coming to Detroit. I have heard for months, going all the way back to like November, that he wants to be in Detroit. He has ties to Detroit. He still comes back to Detroit. So this, I've been telling you guys for months to just pencil in his salary, whatever it is, coming back to the Pistons. And for what it's worth, before I go even further into my thoughts, James Edwards III did tweet out that according to, where is it? Sure I had this up already. The John Hollinger's, what is it pronounced? Board money projection that he has, the formula he has, had Tobias at around $26 million contract wise. So it sounds like the Pistons did, or not sounds like, according to his formula, the Pistons did get a fine deal on Tobias's contract. But I've been very consistent with, as long as the Pistons keep it short term, it's a good deal. Whether they overpay him massively over the 2 years just to get to the salary cap floor for these 2 years, whether it's just to overpay him so they could potentially attach one of the young guys to his contract and use that bigger contract to match salaries next year, whatever it is, as long as it was a short-term contract, there really isn't a downside to the contract. If it was a 3-year plus deal, then I'm a bit concerned. I'm definitely worried about what the money looks like. I've said that all along. If it was longer than 3 years, I'm going to be concerned about what the money looks like. The money better not be a high number if it's a long-term deal. If it's a short-term deal, you can overpay him some. Because like I said, you still keep your flexibility. He's still coming off the books relatively soon before guys' contract extensions, potentially an Ivy or a Duran or, he's coming off the books before those guys. We'll see if those guys are still on the roster come the season. But if they are, like, he's coming off the books before then, it's a short-term deal. He's not stopping anything from happening. And again, like I've mentioned numerous times, You need bigger salaries to attach to younger assets on smaller deals to match salaries. You need those contracts. And the fact that it is a short-term contract makes it even more appealing to other teams when you do start talking trades, if they do decide to try a trade Tobias midseason or maybe next year. So I don't really see what the problem is with this contract, unless you just think Tobias sucks and he just shouldn't be in the NBA. He just shouldn't have a contract. I'm not sure what the downside to the contract is. Again, if it was a longer term contract, I completely would understand. I would not have been a fan of that either. But a 2-year deal, like I think that's perfect. I think that's exactly what you would want out of this type of deal. I think that's what everyone should have wanted out of this deal, was just a 2-year deal. Now, whether he resigns after the 2-year deal on a much cheaper contract just to remain in Detroit and be a vet presence, that could happen. But for this contract, I don't see what the problem is. Tobias, we've talked about Tobias a lot. He provides immediately what this team needs offensively. I truly, I've said this many times, I don't understand the hate towards Tobias Harris. It's not his fault that Philadelphia decided to pay him like a superstar. Yeah, he's not a superstar. He's not an all-star. But he's a fine starter. He's a good player. This idea that Tobias is just like a bad player because he was overpaid by the Sixers, I don't get it. I've said these numbers many, many times before, but we'll go through the numbers again. On spot-up possessions, 238 possessions this past year. 80th percentile, very good. Transition, 226 possessions. 70th percentile, very good. Post-up, 153 possessions. 71st percentile, very good. As an isolation scorer, 138 possessions. 59th percentile, good. On cuts, 78 possessions. 68th percentile, very good. On handoffs, 69 possessions. 53rd percentile, good. On putbacks, 63 possessions, 55th percentile, good. If you go over to what he shot on all catch and shoot jumpers just this past year, he was in the 50th percentile. On unguarded ones, he was at 52nd percentile. On off the dribble jump shots, 44th percentile. And around the rim, he's an average finisher. And this is this past year. This past year wasn't the greatest year for him. If you go to the previous year, I believe the catch and shoot numbers are much better for him. Yeah, if you go to the previous year, he's at 74th percentile as a catch and shooter, according to Synergy. So the previous year, he's at 74th percentile. You go the year before that, he's in the 58th percentile. So he's been a consistent player. Like, he can score in a lot of different ways. Defensively, he's not what, from what I've talked with a few people in Philadelphia. From what I understand, this past year, he was not as good on defense. 2 years ago, he was pretty good on defense, and he's been a consistently fine defender besides this past year. Now, the question will be, was he not good defensively this past year because of everything going on in Philadelphia? Is it because of role? Was he unhappy? Or was it because he simply can't give it on defense anymore and he's getting up there in age? We'll see. I don't think it's that, because he's not that old. He's not like 34. Like, I think he can be, I'm not saying he can be like a really plus defender. That's not what I'm saying at all. But do I think he can be a passable one? Yeah, I think that just comes down to him giving a little bit more effort. So I think he shouldn't be asked to do as much. I think that had a lot to do with it too. Once Embiid went down, he was asked to have a bigger role, and that's not what you want from Tobias. So if he has a lesser role, you hope that he can give more effort on defense. He's a good shooter. He's a good scorer. He can score a multitude of ways. And if he can get back to being, I know this past year is at 35% from deep, but the previous 3 seasons, he was sitting at 38.3% from deep. You probably would like to see him raise that volume a little bit, get closer to 5 attempts like he was in 2020. But this is my overall point is this is a good player. Is he like changing everything for the Pistons? No. Is he going to take them to the playoffs? No. Like, is that signing changing the franchise? No. But was it a good signing? Yeah. Did you get a good player? Yeah. Should you be better with him on the floor than you were last year? Yeah. Like, Tobias is a good basketball player. Is he an all-star? No. Should he be paid like an all-star? No. Was he paid like an all-star? At least according to Hollinger's formula, he was not. I would say no. I don't think $26 million is all-star money. I think that's probably like plus starter money. I think there's an argument you can make that he is a above average starter in the NBA. I don't think that's a crazy thing to say at all. Again, this is a guy over the last over the last 4 seasons, he's averaging 17 points a game, 50% from the field, 38% from deep, and 87% from the free throw line. Like, I truly don't get why people hate Tobias. He was overpaid. He was asked to do a little too much this past year because Embiid was hurt, and he didn't show up in the playoffs this past year. So what? Like, the Pistons aren't going to the playoffs soon. They also aren't going to be asking him to be the second option for a team that's trying to be like a top 3 seed. Oh, and also he had a 58.4 true shooting percentage the last 4 years. Like, he's an efficient scorer. I don't. Again, my biggest issue would have been if it was a long-term contract. It was not. It's a short-term deal. It's a very flexible contract. Very flexible contract. You can get out of it. You can trade it. You can keep it. And nothing stops you from doing it. Doesn't stop you from doing anything. It's a really good contract, short-term deal. And he's a player that helps along with that on the court, but in the locker room. He's a good veteran. Players like him. And he wants to be in Detroit. Like, not a lot of these players probably even want to be in Detroit. Let's keep it a buck. They probably don't want to be here. Tobias wants to be here. He wants to be a veteran. He wants to be good in the locker room for these guys. He wants to be here. And he's a good player. They didn't overpay long-term money. They didn't give him a long-term contract. I truly don't see what the downside is to this contract. I can't find it. I don't know what the downside is. They could even flip this contract at the deadline because it's only going to be a year and a half left on it on like a good contract. I don't really. What's the downside? I need someone to explain me what the downside to that deal. Doesn't mean you have to love it. Like, I'm not saying it was like the best deal ever, but it certainly wasn't a bad one. At the very least, it's just like, okay, that's fine. That makes sense. Like, I don't understand the people who just don't like it and just think it was bad. Like, I need that argument presented to me because I don't see any possible downside to it right now.
Stay up to date on all things Pistons by subscribing to Locked On Pistons, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Coming up, the Panthers signed Sam Reinhart to an 8-year contract for helping win Florida the Stanley Cup. We'll get you the details next on the Big 6 in 60. Game Time makes getting to the ballpark even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, and their best price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. They're obsessed with finding ways to help you save money on tickets. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event. Have you heard how many times I've said the word tickets? They're obsessed with them. Find exclusive flash deals and sponsored deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. There, I said it again. And the Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price on tickets. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the free app and new users can get $20 off their first purchase with code Locked On. Terms apply. That's code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase with Game Time. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, the lowest price guaranteed. Welcome back to the Big 6 in 60. I'm Peter Bukowski. Sam Reinhart couldn't make the Florida Panthers championship parade Sunday because of a wedding, but he still got to celebrate signing a $69 million contract that will keep him with the reigning Stanley Cup champs for the next 8 seasons. Florida now has Reinhart, Matthew Tkachuk, and Alexander Barkov signed for the next 6 years, and Locked On Panthers host Armando Velez has the latest.
Sam Reinhart, who was a 20-goal scorer for many years in Buffalo, and now multiple 30-goal seasons and a 50-goal season, too, for him with the Florida Panthers, and developing his two-way game, too. The second unit on the ice, him and Barkov, and it is reported for 8 more years that he's going to be under this contract. We still don't know the AAV. We still don't know the clauses yet on this deal for Sam Reinhart, but it is looking really good, and that he is going to be staying long-term with the Panthers. And just think about this. Had the Panthers came in, if they came into this free agency, losing the Stanley Cup, then the questions about, is this the actual core that and the team that you can build around the guys to get back? And like I said, the mindset that would have been for this team about trying to promise getting back to the final, but actually wondering to yourself, is this something that's actually believable? Because you have this, you do it once. Yes, you're not to say that the hockey players aren't motivated to go back and to write another redemption story, but the miles along with it and the mental toll that it takes to get back, and for the Panthers to win their cup and also to keep a team around. Because think about like the Colorado Avalanche, for example. They trade for a guy like Josh Manson in their from the Anaheim Ducks. They extend him after they win the cup. Same thing for the Tampa Bay Lightning. You've seen so many guys trade who were extended after they won, like an Anthony Cirelli, Eric Chernak too. Those are guys who got extended. It's like a way of saying thank you for giving us this championship run. We want to pay you, and we think that you are one of the building blocks to even bring another championship, even if there's a little bit of a gap year here and there, because possibly in these next 7-ish years, 8 years for the Panthers, you're going to see maybe one gap year or two as this team is going to get a little older. But also the great thing about the short term for the Panthers is that the average age of the core guys are mostly in their late 20s, their prime years. Excuse me, is the word that I was trying to find here. That is what you're getting here, and you're maximizing what these guys can do in their prime years. And going into this one, I mean, you saw how during all the space that teams need to clear in order to bring guys in. I mean, you think about how the Tampa Bay Lightning traded Tanner Jeannot, Mikhail Sergachev to create possibly space to bring in a Jake Gensel into the mix, and still no offer for Steven Stamkos. You saw Logan Thompson traded during an autograph session in the draft too, which is hard to process if you're him. Rights to Chris Tanev to Toronto too. So the division is only getting harder for the Panthers, and the fact that they took advantage of their Stanley Cup window while it's been here, because I still believe that it's still here too. Is it going to get harder to win and go back to back? Absolutely. Even Vinny Viola during the parade was saying, "Hey, let's go back next year." But also when you win, you just want to keep doing it again. Absolutely, but there's also another thing to be looking out for during free agency, and it's whether Carter Verhaeghe, something that we spoke about going into the weekend, about him having 1 year left on his deal, and looking for that extension too for him as a guy who wasn't qualified an offer for the Tampa Bay Lightning after they won the cup. And look, Panthers brought him in, 2-year deal, then another deal right the year before he became an RFA. And then now hopefully getting business done right before the year before he becomes an unrestricted free agent. But the Panthers do have quite a few unrestricted free agents on their books too. And this is according to Cap Friendly too, but which will be going away pretty soon as the Washington Capitals bought it out. So there's also going to be other resources to use. One that is going to be useful is Puckpedia. So if you need to transition from one to the other, Puckpedia is your resource. But the following UFAs, at least notable UFAs for the Panthers, are Nick Cousins, Ryan Lomberg, Brandon Montour, Oliver Ekman-Larsson, Dmitry Kulikov, Kevin Stenlund, Kyle Okposo, Stephen Lawrence, Anthony Stolarz. Chances are Montour and Anthony Stolarz are likely gone. Those guys are going to get some cash for them. As Brandon Montour, no guarantee that he reflects his play from Paul Maurice's system to someone else's, because really he hadn't really exploded, especially offensively, really until Paul Maurice came. So, and also when you're a Stanley Cup champion, your price is going to go up. So that's the hardest, but that's the thing about being in a cap sport of like the NHL, and especially if you're a hard cap where you can't restructure contracts too. That's going to be really difficult. Everything in your contract is set in stone, AAV, and guarantees. There's bonuses, obviously, so that changes buyout situations too, depending on how you go about that route with signing bonuses and all. But that is definitely something to look out for, even for Reinhardt's contract, which once again we still don't have the details.
Stay up to date on all things Panthers by subscribing to Locked On Panthers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks again to all of our hosts for their expert analysis on the biggest stories of the day. Follow your favorite team's podcast wherever you listen and on YouTube for new episodes every weekday. Tune in again tomorrow for a new hour on the 6 biggest stories in sports. This has been the Big 6 in 60, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.